The Dingers podcast is on the air. I'm your host, Mitch. I'm here with Jake and Kevin. We are part of the OnTapSportsNetwork.com podcast group. We're here with Cubs on Tap and all the Four Feathers podcast. There's so many great podcasts on Tap Sports Network. Make sure you check them out on OnTapSportsNetwork.com. They're the best in Chicago news, sports news. So stay up to date. They got great articles every day on all your Chicago sports. Make sure you head over there to check out their great articles. Also, guys, we got ourselves a leadoff hitter. Nico HOERNER, man, just tearing the cover off the ball. Triple yesterday, double to or a single to start the game off today. What are your guys' initial thoughts? Like, Ross has come out and said that he's our guy right now. Are you for it, against it? What are your thoughts initially in this early spring training?
Yeah, I think that it's great. Like, I think what Ross talked about was Nico's preparation, right? And his ability to, he's such a gamer. And I think that he sets the tone for the entire lineup behind him, especially in that first inning, right? He goes up to the plate. The guys behind him know that he's got a plan up there. It's kind of been talked about, he's not the best on base percentage guy, which is really what you want at the top of the lineup. On the broadcast today, Pat and JD were talking about how Nico might actually be like the best second, like the best two-hole hitter, because he makes contact and could drive people in. But for the makeup of the team right now, I think that Nico makes a lot of sense. I can't really think of anybody that I'd rather have up there unless we knew that Nick Madrigal was going to bat, whatever, 320 or something like that. But otherwise, yeah, I think that he's the guy up there. I love his mentality at the plate. Kevin, what were your thoughts when you heard it?
Well, so I really loved what Ross said when he was talking about, like, Nico's the guy that they have right now, but they're not asking him to change his approach. Yes. They're letting him go up there and be himself, because that was something I think we've seen the last few years. When somebody gets put in a leadoff role, they're looking more to see, okay, I got to get as many pitches. I got to see as many pitches as possible. I'm looking for like that walk or that deep count hit. And instead, they just came out and said, Nico's going to go up and he's going to stay natural. He's going to stay himself. And we're seeing it play out. It's really hard to say, no, please don't hit a double now, or don't hit one into the gap. No, you're just supposed to get to first base. But I love that he's just going out there, being himself. He's getting on base. And it's one of those too, like, I know you want to see the leadoff guy end up like lead off more than one time in the game or whatever, but it works out well that he can then turn around and be able to bat in the 9th or the 8th batter the next time through the order.
Right.
And I agree with you, Jake. I don't think we got a guy on the team that really is the prototypical leadoff hitter, but this works really well.
I also wonder too, Mitch, before I want it, because I want to know what you think too, but the question that I kind of have is, we keep talking about, everybody talks about Dexter Fowler, right? The you go, we go thing. Obviously he was pivotal to the World Series team. But the thing that I think about, like, I can't think of anybody out there on any team off the top of my head that feels like a traditional leadoff guy. Like 10, 15 years ago, maybe it was like, I don't know if he batted leadoff, so I could be totally wrong. But a guy like Jimmy Rollins, or like a speedster, like a guy that
Kenny Lofton.
Kenny Lofton, for sure. Yeah. Juan Pierre has been talked about in Cubs circles, right? I just don't think that the leadoff man exists in that same vein that it used to. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, you saw that even with the Phillies last year, and the Cubs did it. Like, they had Schwarber batting leadoff. Yep. Phillies did that in the World Series. Like, yeah, it's changed. Baseball's changed from the 80s, 90s of you having to have that speedster batting leadoff. What I think you do need to have batting leadoff is somebody that takes really good at bats.
Right.
And Nico does that. The hard thing that I'm wrestling with Nico being our leadoff guy is it kind of goes back to like when he first initially came up. Like he was such a good contact guy. And when you have that in the leadoff spot, it could be an out. It could be a quick, easy out where if you have him down in the order and you need contact, and this is kind of back when the Cubs were with Bryant, Rizzo, we had a Schwarber, and then you had Nico in there, and you had a lot of strikeout. There was a lot of strikeouts in that lineup. Nico was there to kind of break that up, and he was also there if a guy was on base, he could move that runner over, which he was like the perfect at bat for that. Now, the Cubs lineup is drastically different now than it was back then. Like they have a lot of guys in the lineup currently who put the ball in play. Like when you have Trey Mancini, like the dude has been absolutely killing it this spring training. Love his approach, but he puts the ball in play quite a bit. Hap, he's cut down his strikeouts a ton. And if you do have Nick Madrigal in there playing third base, like there's another guy that's going to be high contact. So you have guys near Seiya. He doesn't strike out a lot. I mean, I know he's not going to be in the batting order at the beginning of the season because of an injury, but like he's eventually going to be in that lineup. There's another guy that puts the ball in play. So it's like, okay, we don't necessarily need that anymore. We're okay moving that guy who has a really good at bat back up to the top of the lineup and put him in that leadoff spot. And the thing is, when you look at the rest of the guys, I don't see anybody else that would jump out of being that leadoff guy. Like there's nobody that's like, yeah, he would be perfect for that spot. And so I like what I've seen so far with him in spring training. He doesn't seem like he's changed his approach. He seemed like he's taking the same at bats and doing the same thing that Nico does. Hit the gaps, drive the ball, and hit the ball hard. So so far I've liked it. But what I've liked even more, and it's going to make a huge difference this year with the bigger bases, is the stolen bases. You saw him today get on and get a stolen base, and so it was like great. Like let's get on base, let's get some stolen bases. I mean that video is Pete Crow Armstrong, but Nico Hoerner was up to bat. But that's something that Nico definitely does, is he's going to steal some bases, and we're going to see that quite a bit more. So I like that. Like Jake, you look like you have something like you're thinking.
Yeah, I think so. Kind of what you were talking about, like what it all comes down to, I think I mentioned this is just on base percentage. We're talking about on base percentage. And the reason why it's on base percentage is different than average is because you want guys up, you want your leadoff guy to work the count. You want the batters behind him to be able to see the pitches that this, the starter is going to be featuring that day, right? So one of the problems with Nico is he's not super aggressive at the plate, but if he sees his every batter, you want this, right? If they see their pitch to go after it. But I do think Nico has a little bit more of an attack mentality at the plate. But I'm looking at the projections this season, and he's actually the second on the team in on base percentage. I don't know what projections they're using here. This is just roster resource, which is great, a great resource for I'm looking to see what other teams, like what, championship contender teams have in their leadoff position. And a lot of it is like on base percentage above 350. So Nico is at a 330, and the only person ahead of him with a 331 is Eric Hosmer. Again, projections. The reason why you don't just slot Eric Hosmer into the one hole is it comes down to base running. Like you said, Mitch, Nico is also projected for 20 stolen bases, which is huge. If you get him out, like he is going to be able to drive it into the gap, like you said, Mitch, and I do expect him to be a doubles machine. But with the bigger bases, the pitch clock, I think that Nico, I think we are going to see 20 stolen bases. And whether he gets on from a walk or a single, you've got essentially a double off the bat, kind of going back to like what I talked about with Greg Huss, that I hope is able to translate to the big league sometime. We talked about in Bash, the statistic that he created, weighing in stolen bases, and how there's no statistic at the major league level right now that really values stolen bases aside from just the counting stat of total number.
Because it hasn't been important the last couple of years because they've kind of just teams haven't been using
shifted
it
away from it. Yeah,
the last time it was used was 2015 with the Royals. Like that's the last time you saw like a team significantly use stolen bases to win games. And
pretty much.
I'm excited to see that again.
Yeah, it's crazy to see. Like, I feel like guys are really trying. Like, even Bodie, I think, has 1 or 2 stolen bases, so he's doing everything.
Yeah.
I don't know, Kevin, if you have anything else that you wanted to say, but I think that transitions into what I wanted to talk about next.
Well, Jim here has Bellinger. He likes Bellinger in the leadoff spot with his old stroke, and he's one that he could steal some bases as well, get on base, could steal some bases. He has some speed, so
and traditionally a really good on base percentage guy.
Yep. So I mean, he would be the only, like when I said earlier, when I look at the lineup and I don't really see anybody else, he would be one of the other guys that I'd be like, okay, like I think he's had experience in the leadoff hole in his past with the Dodgers. I could see him possibly doing it. I could also see Madrigal getting that spot. Like he's done it with the Cubs last year and fared fairly well last year. So, but I mean, as far as it's going right now, Nico is doing great in spring training, looks comfortable. And that's what you want out of a leadoff guy, a guy who's comfortable in that spot and who owns it, not somebody who's kind of forced into it. I think that's what happened when Schwarber back in the day got kind of put into it. He just didn't look comfortable being in that leadoff hole. Now, after a couple of years of doing it, you can see he looks more comfortable. It wasn't the Anthony Rizzo, I'm just going to step up in here for a couple of games and lead off and be the best leadoff hitter in all of baseball for a couple of games. But yeah, right. But you talked about Bodie, and this leads us into our next conversation of, so we have a plethora of infielders on this team. Are we going to see any of them traded before the season? Jake, let's start with you.
I am so torn because I've always liked David Bodie, but the way that I see it is if we can get value for him right now, any value, you do it. And I don't know what I think it would make more sense for him to go to the Rockies. So the two teams that need middle infielders right now are the Rockies and the Dodgers. The Rockies lost Brendan Rodgers for the season, their second baseman, I think with a shoulder tear. He needs shoulder surgery. And then the Dodgers lost Gavin Lux, their shortstop, to an ACL tear. Did you see the play that he tore it on?
Ugly.
Just garbage. Like that just sucks. Like that's like I almost think it's funny because he's from Wisconsin, so it's like a Midwestern nice guy. Where for those listening, if you haven't seen the video, he's running out a ground ball from second to third. The third baseman makes the play and has to throw to first, obviously. And Lux kind of does this like weird juking thing to try to make sure that he's not in the way of the throw, which like, yes, there is runner's interference, but also if you're the fielder, you're instinctually trying to get around the runner anyway. Like he wasn't going to hit Lux with the throw. And then you just see Lux's right knee buckle. And it sucks, man. Like Lux has been a top tier prospect. Anyway, it sucks that happened. So, So 2 middle infielders in the AL West are out for the season. 2 guys that were projected to have solid seasons, maybe big breakout campaigns for both of them. So now both of these teams are struggling. They need to fill these gaps. And like you said, Mitch, the Cubs have a plethora of infield. So like running over the options really quick. McKinstry's a big one, although he hasn't really played super well this spring. But again, spring training numbers don't always tell the full story, which then leads to David Bodie, who's batting like over 500.
MVP.
He's 8 for 12 with 5 RBIs in 7 games.
God, what's his? Do you have a slugging?
No, but I can't find it.
It's got to be like over 700, which is just absurd.
Astronomical.
I guess like before we even get into the trade options, like do you guys, what do you think of Bodie performing right now? Like, do you take anything away from it?
Spring training is so weird. I mean, what was it 2 years ago? Jock Peterson was just like slugging balls everywhere. And it was one of those, as a fan watching it, you're like, yes, we're going to get that in Wrigley, we're going to get that in Wrigley. And then you find out later, one, he has those funny fly balls that he thought were going out of the field and he gets stuck rounding first or whatever. But then you hear like, Rizzo and Happ and Bryant were sitting there going like, those aren't going to fly out of the ballpark in Wrigley until June. Like don't get your heart set on it. So spring training is always a mixed bag. I love that he's having success. I mean, I like that he's making it a hard decision for everybody. I mean, that's what you want to see. Will it translate? I don't know. I do also, there's some soft spots I have for Bodie. I love that grand slam when he's doing the airplane running around the bases, like classic. I'd love to see him succeed again. But like you said, Jake, if there's some value to be had for him at the same time, like he's not an infielder for the Cubs' future. He'd be great to have play well this year. But if you can flip him for some value, I think that would be fantastic.
My thinking is I don't know how much you're going to get for him. And it's tough because, I mean, Jeff and I had this conversation last week about Bodie just because he started the spring training hot, and we're like, okay, let's just see how long this lasts. And he's carried it over. His OBP is 611. His OPS is 1.611. So those are some crazy numbers. The last time that when Bodie was healthy was 2020 season, I believe. And if you remember that season, he was probably the most clutch player on the team. Like driving in runs. He was the guy who you wanted up to bat in that short season, that whole season long. Like you wanted Bodie in there driving. I think he was the one who like started the season as the starting second baseman. But he played some key roles in that team, that 2020 team. The tough thing is he doesn't have a starting position spot right now. And you see him like last year, he came back, and I don't think he was fully healthy. I think he rushed to get back because he thought he was going to lose a spot, and he was going to do whatever he could to get back in and play so that the Cubs remembered his name with all these infielders that they were going out and getting.
And to his credit, I mean, he did in 41 games, he had a 110 WRC plus. So he was better than league average, even though he was striking out 35% of the time. And I kind of remember thinking that when he came back last season. As Jim chimes in, Bodie is due $4 million this year and $5.5 million next year, which is like, I mean, for like a bench piece that's kind of a veteran presence, like that's pretty good. Like that's good money. I think that's money well spent. And it's worth noting too that Bodie's from Colorado. Yeah. So for him to go back and play for his hometown team, whether he has an allegiance to the Rockies at all or not, I mean, that's cool for everybody that plays baseball, right? Like
it's you grow spin.
Up dreaming. Yeah. I mean, so I don't know. I don't think that Bodie, I don't really think that this is legit. I wish it were, but he's 29 years old. He turns 30 in April. So I don't think that this is like a late career breakout, but I do think that he's a solid contributor and a guy that could be good for a team like the Rockies.
I think for me, it's I have more of an allegiance to Bodie because I've had those fond memories. Like we've seen him for longer. So it's like McKinstry, meh, like I don't really know you anyway. Like you were on a team that sucked last year. So like, so that might be, I'm letting my heart get in the way of what my head should be thinking with Bodie. But like, yeah, right now out of value, probably Bodie has more value just because he's had a good spring. But like you said, Jake, that teams called the Cubs this offseason interested in McKinstry. Like there's something about that prospect pedigree that he does have it. Like there is like in the minor leagues, he has had some really good minor league stats and over a couple of years. So I think right now it's going to come down to who can they get more value from. The only thing is, right now, I think McKinstry has a 40-man roster spot. Bodie doesn't. They could keep Bodie and send him down to the minors and keep him with the Cubs, and they're not losing anything.
Right.
And they have then insurance if anybody goes down, if like Nico gets hurt, which he kind of tends to do sometimes, like they can bring Bodie up and put him in a second base and they could be okay. That is where you kind of got to play that factor in of who they keep, who they let go, or who they trade.
But they also have that flexibility with Madrigal, who has minor league options. And so I think that he's the other guy that everybody's talking about, Madrigal could be traded. And selfishly, like I'm
not going to happen.
I don't think it's going to happen either.
Mm-hmm.
But so here's where I'll bring in the fantasy baseball perspective. Somebody in my dynasty baseball league offered me Nick Madrigal for my 5th round pick in the first year player draft next year. A 5th round pick out of 5 rounds, it's nothing. It's a total flyer. So to trade that 5th round pick for Madrigal, I was like, yeah, I'll put my money where my mouth is, because I'm the one tweeting about him all the time. I'm the one tweeting out that Madrigal season meme that I made back in like December or whatever, and I'm tweeting it like every day. I'd be interested to see how a bat like Madrigal would play at Coors, right? So that's another thing that I think that the Rockies. I think the Rockies and the Dodgers are going to make a trade with someone,
right?
And I know that Jed is in contact with them because it just makes sense for the glut of infielders that they have. And I guess, this was something that I put in our show notes. Like I'll eat my words on McKinstry taking the third base job out the gate. Things don't look very good for him right now. But he is that lefty bat with a little bit of pop, potentially, and they need another lefty bat in the lineup. So I don't know. I mean, it actually kind of feels like the roster building this year is kind of fun. Like there are a lot of fringy guys, but I actually do think that we could talk ourselves into some of these guys becoming, if not everyday contributors, like useful pieces off the bench of like a good team, if not this year, next year. Whereas last year, I feel like we were trying to con ourselves into, oh no, the team's going to be good. Like the conversations are actually a lot more interesting this year.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And I don't know. It's interesting because we talked ourselves into these guys could, if they push well, maybe we'll add, a piece here or there at the midseason, knowing like they would have to add all over the diamond. And this year it's kind of one of those, like, I don't know, so many folks are playing well that it's like, okay, I like seeing this guy in the lineup. I like seeing Morel in there. Oh, Bodie's playing well. Ooh, Madrigal's kind of having some interesting hit and run situations kind of pop up. Well, Hoerner's playing well. Happ's playing well. Mancini's driving the ball. Bellinger seems to be kind of picking it up maybe a little bit. And then all of it's kind of building in your head, like, if these all hit right, they could be like the Giants of a couple years ago, where they had these guys have their all-star best seasons ever, and it just all of them hit at the same time, and it led the team forward.
Which, I mean, you talked about adding. Jed has come out and said that there still could be a possibility of adding to this bullpen. Jake, who's the name out there, which we've heard different names. We've heard a lefty that they would like to be added into the bullpen, but our bullpen has been pretty stacked with a lot of guys, a lot of arms that are quality arms. It's not just that we have a lot of guys that can pitch. We have a lot of guys that can pitch and get outs in the major leagues. What are your thoughts? Do we go out and add some more, or do you think we're pretty set?
I've talked about it on a previous episode about Zach Britton So let's put a little bit of perspective here. Matt Moore, I believe, signed with the Angels for like $7.5 million. And then Chafin signed with the Diamondbacks for maybe like $5.5 to $6 million. So those are two lefties. And I think the reason why Moore got a little bit more money is because he does have the ability to start. He can be that swing man for the Angels if necessary. He hasn't been a great starter in recent years. He had like 1 or 2 good seasons with the Rays, and then he just kind of totally fell off. But he seemed to find it again last year out of the bullpen for the Rangers, I think. I can't remember. I think he was on the Rangers. But the reason I make this point is because I read today on The Athletic that the Cubs are about $8 million away from hitting the luxury tax threshold. And I do think that because of Britton's injury history, you could probably sign him to a lower contract with payout incentives, right? So like if he hits X number of innings or X number of games, then another tier of pay hits based on however the verbiage of the contract shakes out. What I talked about with Britton, I think 2 weeks ago on the podcast, was that he may want to pitch for a contender at this point in his career. So it's totally, as it always is for the free agents, the ball is in their court with which team do they want to join. So if I'm the Cubs, I maybe take a chance on Britton if I could give him like $3.5 million plus incentives, because you want, in case the team is playing well, you want to have money left. You want to have luxury tax threshold room left over to make deadline buys, right? Because if you're going to go out there and trade for a guy at the deadline, it's probably a guy who's like in a contract year or on a 1-year contract that is being paid more. So you're going to be taking on more salary, and you're going to push up against that luxury tax threshold. Now, Mitch, do I think they need to add another arm? I don't really think so. I think they've done a really good job of showing the depth that they have in the bullpen. And Ryan Borucki, a lefty that they picked up, I think the last team he was on was the Jays. He pitched today. Gave up an unearned run that was on Tucker Barnhart for trying to pick off a guy down at second base on like a snap throw, which just was like unnecessary. But I guess if you're going to do that, do it in spring training.
Right.
But I like Borucki. I think that he could be decent. His slider looked, solid enough today. And he faced mostly lefties, which is good. Like, that's why you want a lefty, but you got to have a guy who obviously can face right-handers nowadays too, because of the 3-batter minimum. So I don't know. I could be sold on them adding another arm, but I'm not. I don't think it's urgent. What do you think it is, Kevin? Do you think they need to add another arm?
I don't think it's urgent at all. We've seen so many guys just kind of popping up. Every name that seems to be out there throwing the ball every day coming out, which, I mean, how many different bullpen arms do you see in a given game during spring training? It seems like there's like 6 or 7 of the guys running out there. But there's only been a couple of instances where I've seen a guy come out there and just get shelled or look lost. What was it? I can't remember if it was Rowan Wick's first or second appearance. He started out really well, and then he looked lost for a little while. And
we've seen those stretches during the season from Wick.
Right. Yeah, that part had me a little worried, because I was like, oh, he's looking good. Oh, he's looking confident. Like he had some stuff going on. It would look good. And then it was like, oh, what's going on? And then is it a Correa?
Yes. I was going to bring him up because lefty looked absolutely filthy.
Mm-hmm.
When was it? Was it Saturday's game?
I think it was Saturday's game. Yep.
His splitter looked absolutely just insane. The splitter was splitting. It was.
Yep.
It
looked good.
He looked interesting. It was interesting. It's the first I've seen of him pitch, and he looked really good.
That's
not the Correa Cubs fans wanted.
No, I was gonna say it's
right.
The one we got and the one we need. We need a lefty.
Correa.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where, like, I'm okay if Jed floats an offer to Britton, but I hope it's nice and low, team friendly, lots of incentives. Got to give the guy that. But I'm okay if we don't add a guy. Yeah, like Jim's talking about here. It's all right. We got so many options.
Yeah,
I mean, it's Mitch. Sorry, it's interesting that you mentioned Correa. I mean, in 21 and 22, he was a stud. At single A, low A, he 44 strikeouts in 26 innings in 2021. And then in 2022, 40 strikeouts in 40 innings, but a 2.93 ERA. The guy's clearly got strikeout stuff. He's more of it looks like he leans more of a ground ball pitcher, which is good with the infield defense. So
it is heavy splitter. Like, yeah, he looked so good. Like, I was like, and you could even see who's broadcasting.
That was Rick Sutcliffe and JD.
Yeah, JD and Rick were both like, you could see them like, both of them like, okay, this guy's
because I think at one point Rick was sitting there calling the shots like, no, this is going to be another fastball right down the middle, 98, 90, at the top of the zone. And then it'd be, I don't know, another splitter or something. It'd be like, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah. JD was like, that's exactly what you want that splitter to do. Like that was a good one. Like they were like kind of blown away. Like, but yeah, I mean, I would take that's what they're looking for. They're looking for another lefty in the bullpen. I think Brandon Hughes could hold it down for a while. But like to know that we have those type of guys in our minor league system in knocking on the door, like you have Brandon Little, you have Anthony Kay, who could be a lefty coming in there. But like there's this bullpen has so many righties and lefties, power arms, like Jim kind of brought up in the comments. Man, Cam Sanders looked absolutely filthy in his outing the other day. Like just his stuff was moving, and his sweeper slider looked insane. Which I love having. Like we had him on the podcast. He's a great guy, great dude, and has great stuff. Want to see him there's so many guys I want to get shots. But like our bullpens look good. Fulmers look good. Boxbergers look good. Duffy look good. Merriweather. Like these are the arms that are probably going to
Duffy's looked really good.
Yeah.
Duffy's looked really. Yeah. He gave up a home run today, I think. But before, I mean, he was just like shutting people down. And he's been solid for the Twins.
Yep.
So,
but I think I think our bullpen's gonna be Fulmer, Boxberger, Hughes, Thompson, Duffy, Merriweather, Sampson. And then there's going to be two spots that are going to be fighting for. I think Jeremiah Estrada deserves that spot. The guy's absolutely insane. He might not just because he does have a lot of options, but he needs to be that other guy. And then it's going to come down to one more spot. I don't know who's going to get it. I think it's going to be another lefty. Either they're going to add by signing Britton, or they're going to give it to either Anthony Kay or Brandon Little,
Elzalai even.
I forgot Elzalai. I forgot Elzalai. I skipped
but that's the whole point. Like we have all of these arms.
Mark Later Jr.
Yeah. I mean, we've got all these arms that are exciting. Unless we have anything else to say about the bullpen, this isn't something that we put in the notes here, but what do you guys? I know you guys talked about it a little bit last week, you and Jeff, Mitch, but now Kevin and I are on. What do we think is happening with right field? Like how does opening day? Who's manning right field? How does that work itself out?
I made a video last week about Nelson Velasquez. I really think right now, like he's going to be the guy out there, but I think it's going to be like a series of three guys that are going to kind of float out there. I mean, I want to see Brendan Davis be called up as soon as possible, like the rest of you. Yep. But at the same time, with and it's not because of his injuries. I just think he needs a little bit more time to get some baseball games under him with all of his injuries before we just call him up and give him the keys, even though there's a door open. And I know Brendan Davis sees that door open and he's like, I've worked so hard and gotten so many setbacks. I want this. And he's been doing good in spring training. He's been hitting. Yeah. I think he had a double today. He had a single in the 9th inning yesterday after Pete Armstrong and led us to a comeback win the day before. So it's like, I see that they want that, but I think it's going to be probably Nelson Velasquez, Christopher Morel will probably make the opening day roster, which I think if Saya didn't go down, there could have been a possibility of him being sent down just because they're one of my spot. But I could see Morel playing some time out there. I could see even Patrick Wisdom has played out there. And if we need a bat in there, some power, I could see him playing out there. Actually, there's one, Mike Talkman.
Yeah.
That guy, he's going to probably be on the roster. I was last year overseas, year before with the Yankees, a great bat. I know Tom from the compound talks really highly of him. They loved him in New York. He's been tearing the cover off the ball in spring training. He's a left-handed bat, which we want in the order. You could see him spending some time out there.
He was the guy, when you brought up this topic, Jake, I was sitting here going, okay, I know Morel, I know Velasquez. Who was the third guy? And I was trying to sit here and think because I think it was on the broadcast on maybe Sunday, maybe it was Saturday, but one of the days they were talking about who's going to fill in that spot for Saya, and that Talkman was playing his way into the conversation and really making it about like, hey, he's a lefty bat. He's playing fantastic. Hard to tell with spring training, but a lot of those other options that we just listed off could be down at AAA waiting if Talkman doesn't work out. So I think he's kind of the dark horse candidate. Like he could make it. I kind of wouldn't mind seeing it because we kind of know what we have with Christopher Morel. He's fantastic. He's going to be a Cub for many years to come. But you might want to see what this Talkman has.
I agree. I think so. It's worth noting. I'm sure if you've listened to the broadcast, I'm sure they've talked about it. A Palatine native, Fremd High School, my rival high school. This is Talkman. I think he's more than a dark horse. I think that he, depending on the pitching matchup, unless we face a lefty on opening day, which we're playing the Brewers, so it's going to be Corbin Burns. I think Talkman's in there opening day, especially if he keeps playing like he is this spring. Mitch, I like Nelson Velasquez. I really want to see him succeed, but he's striking out over 50 in 13 at bats, but still 8 strikeouts in 13 at bats, 651 OPS in spring training. Talkman's got a 1467 OPS, again, 10 at bats, but I really like what I've seen out of him. I don't know much about either Talkman or Velasquez defensively. I think Velasquez has a great arm in right field,
he has a cannon for an arm.
Yeah, but the way that I look at Velasquez and Morel, I see two guys kind of going back to like what you were saying about Brennan Davis, Mitch. I want to see all three of those guys really get confident in AAA. Like Morel, I was trying to figure it out. Morel is striking out almost 50% of the time so far this spring. And we know that he ran into strikeout issues toward the end of last season. And it's because he's a young dude, making you hear on these national podcasts and even some of the Cubs podcasts, you'll hear it on this Cubs podcast right now. Making the jump from AAA to the majors is tougher than it's ever been. The level of competition is so elevated that's why you see so many top prospects falter when they get the call. I'd rather see guys, just like I said with McKinstry, he'd be the third baseman and give Madrigal the time to take reps at third in AAA to start the season. I'm going to say the same thing about Tauchman taking the right field job and letting the young guys get some reps in. Morel will probably start on the Major League roster. I don't know how the numbers work off the top of my head. I know we've got 4 bench bats, but because of his versatility, Morel probably starts in the majors. But
we have five bench guys that you can probably use.
5 bench guys. Yeah, I mean,
that's if you carry 10 relief pitchers.
Let me see what Roster Resource is saying here. I'm curious to see what Roster Resource is saying for bench. So they've got opening day right fielder. They have Christopher Morel slotted in the 9 hole. And then the bench is they have a 4-man bench with Gomes, Rios, who had another big game today, McKinstry, and Velasquez. So it's interesting they don't have Tauchman.
Which I've really liked the Rios signing that more and more. Like that dude can hit. Do you want Tauchman's KBO stats?
Yes, actually, I haven't looked at them.
His batting average was 289. His OBP was 366. His slug was 430. His OPS was 796. He had 12 dingers and 43 RBIs in 144 games. So those are pretty decent stats. I mean, I don't know, like I'm not a big knowing the KBO ins and outs of if that's, but I think he was like top like up there for average and slug in the KBO, like serviceable man.
I think KBO, if I remember correctly, kind of is more equal to like a AA, AAA, like leaning AAA, and then
which those would be good AAA numbers. Like I would like,
yeah,
that would be knocking on the door of getting called up and getting time.
For sure. Yeah. Especially as a guy like in this situation, right? Yep. Like where the starting right fielder is out.
Yep.
And then just to finish my thought, NPB Japan, the Japanese league is more like, I think they equate it to kind of like a quad A. So yeah, I mean, I think my friend Zach listens. I don't know if he listens every week, but my friend Zach went to college with Tauchman. So he got to be buddies with him. And just for Zach's a big Cubs fan. So for him to get like the treatment of being able to, get tickets from Tauchman and maybe get a field pass or something, like I love it for him. Like my buddy Zach deserves it. And then, I'd maybe try to fly on his coattails a little bit in there.
Well, we could get Tauchman on the podcast.
Totally. I mean, I actually told Zach, I was like, hey, if you talk to Mike and he wants to get on the podcast. And I also, I had a friend who played college ball with Mastroboni, and he was like, hey, do you want me to see if Miles wants to be on the podcast? And I said, totally, like, let me know. And I have a feeling that probably Tauchman and Mastroboni would be guys who are like waiting to see how the roster shakes out.
Yeah, before they
and then if they do
coming on a Cubs podcast.
Right. You don't want to come on a Cubs podcast because neither of their jobs are guaranteed right now. Because the other thing too is like Tauchman could have a great season, and because of his history with the Yankees, someone could come. I don't know if anybody else has issues with their outfield depth right now, but Tauchman could be a guy that other teams come calling about, saying like, hey. Because the Cubs are the ones that took the chance on him after he came out of the KBO last season.
Yep.
I've always liked him, though. I think that he got shafted in Colorado like a lot of their outfielders did. He was ready at least a year before they called him up. I don't even know if he ever played for the Rockies. I think his first major league playing time was
for the Giants.
He played with the Giants as well. Yeah. But I just like he got screwed in Colorado. I think he was ready to go, and they just didn't give him the shot.
Yep. Well, let's touch on pitch clock quick, just because that's kind of been the talk of the whole spring training, and Jeff and I shared our initial thoughts of the pitch clock, but it's getting more and more stuff is happening with the pitch clock. And so, Jake, what we didn't get to hear your thoughts last week. What are your thoughts so far on the pitch clock? It's pros and cons of the pitch clock so far.
I'm in favor, especially in spring training. I haven't watched many of the games, if I'm being honest. I just kind of check the box scores after the game, because the spring training games are kind of tough to watch. There's a new pitcher every inning. The games don't matter, etc.
Yep.
But I like the pitch clock. I think the one thing that's interesting. So two things. I'll talk about fan perspective first. My buddy Mike said, so we're season ticket holders, co-season ticket holders. And he said, I don't like that the game time is going to be down to like maybe 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes. So if we're at the game and we go up to grab food or grab beers, we're missing more baseball. And I was like, oh shit, I didn't think about that, but you're totally right. But majority of the games I'm going to be watching on TV, and I like the quicker pace. We've seen all the videos comparing to guys who hold the ball.
Those beer vendor guys are just going to make more money now because they're going to be in the
sitting in the bleachers. They haven't had vendors out in the bleachers.
Well, now they're going to need to get them out there again.
They do. That's what Mike said. They need to bring him back. So from the player perspective, if you listen to the compound last week, Hap was talking about, and this makes more sense for outfielders because they've got all that ground to cover. He was saying that he like ran down a fly ball, and then you got 30 seconds between batters, and that's a decent amount of time. But like if you're used to kind of meandering back to your spot because you want to catch your breath right after sprinting after a ball, he looked up and like the pitch, the pitcher was in his windup again already. So I think he proposed that was one thing that he would like to see, the time between batters extended a little bit. I think they said one other thing, but I can't remember. But overall, I think it's great.
I would like to see the clock in between batters. I've seen more strikes on the batter because of that. They haven't gotten set. And they don't like the ball getting thrown around. And so the pitcher either starts out with a strike because they have no control of it because the catcher throws it down and the infield takes their good old time getting it back to the pitcher. And so it's just that, like, I get you're trying to the pace. That's what we talked about. Just the pace of play, the pace of watching
it's not the time. It's not the length of the game.
It's
the pace. It's how quickly the action is occurring, or frequently, I guess I should say.
That's what I'm really interested to talk to my mom, because she can't stand watching baseball on TV, but she loves going to watch the Iowa Cubs or watch it in person because she said it's too slow. When you're there in person, you have other things to look at. You can let your eyes wander, then you're back to the game. But her whole thing on TV is like, it's so slow. Nothing's happening. I don't know if she's watched a spring training game yet. So I'm going to talk to her about it. Because I have a feeling she will like the pace more. There are some bugs to figure out that whole what was it they were having the other day? Was it not Scherzer? I think there was a New York pitcher who like struck a guy out in 20 seconds because he was quick pitching him or whatever.
Yankees, yeah.
Just there's some little bugs. Yeah. But then even I think it was Talking Baseball was talking about it, and they were talking about that, and it's like, yeah, sure, you can quick pitch. You do that for like 3 batters in the row, and the pitcher themselves is like panting up there, like out of breath. Like that'll all settle out over time. Got some bugs to figure out. Who was he saying? Was it Buck Showalter was tinkering around that with trying to get pitchers to check over or to disengage twice to see what happens on the third time, like how much more of a lead is an acceptable amount of a lead that before the pitcher will try that third time, because they have to get the out or it's a balk. Like there's some kind of interesting little tidbits in there that could be interesting to see play out.
I haven't seen a situation like that. I would love for a pitcher to do that on purpose just to see what.
Yeah, where's that runner's comfort zone become? Like they're not going halfway, like how many more steps do they take?
Well, they even brought it up on the compound too. They said if they know that the guy is going to take off, they'll balk anyway. Because like if they know that the guy has such a big lead, they'll risk a balk to make that final pickoff. I don't think we're going to see that. I don't think we're going to see it in play. Like, how often do you really see pickoffs?
The one thing that I haven't liked is that and I get that the umps are doing it now. It's like you as a parent, when you set a new rule, you're going to be super strict to begin with. But there's been some times when like the pitcher actually throws the pitch, and then after the pitch, like, nope, sorry, that was a pitch violation. Sorry, I didn't like call it earlier. And it's like, yeah, but I threw the pitch and it was a strike, and now you're going to take it away from me. And like, so just those things need to be ironed out. And I do get it. Like, they're doing that because that's what you need to do in spring training. You need to set the precedent of this is what it is, to get everybody involved or kind of in line. And in hearing some of the minor league guys talk about it and seeing the rule infractions last year in the minors, it was the first 2 weeks were the most infractions. And then it just plummeted after that and kind of evened out after the first month. And then it was just people understood when to pitch, when to get back in the box, and everything ran smoothly. So you might see that. And it's good that we're getting the spring training to do all that. Hopefully by the time we still have less than a month, but like we still have some good time to be able to iron those things out. So when the season starts, we're golden, we're good. And so that's what I'm just looking forward to.
Yeah.
But I do like, I don't really have anything much more. I'm ready to see some actual meaningful games being played in Wrigley Field. I love Sloan Park in Arizona, but I didn't go out there. And so I want to be able to go to some games at Wrigley and watch the Cubs play some real baseball and just see the best nine play. I want to see the best nine in the lineup together and winning some games. So that's going to be here before we know it. Make sure you're going to ontapsportsnetwork.com and checking out all the Cubs articles. They're pumping them out every day. And go check out our YouTube channel, the On Tap Sports Network on YouTube. Subscribe there. Got great content, really pushing, kind of growing our video content on there. So make sure you're following that. Go get yourself some TG Brews, some Top Lane Goliath Brewery beer.
Goes well with spring training games. It'll go well with regular season games. I will be drinking a lot of them during the postseason. So, enjoy. Speak it into existence, Kevin.
And we are with Connect Roasters, so make sure that you are drinking the coffee that the Cubs players drink. Connect Roasters, and use Dinger's Pod code Dinger's Pod to get 25% off your first order of the Home Run Club. So if you join the Home Run Club, I think Jake has, Kevin has, like, join, get coffee sent to your doorstep every month. Great coffee. I've really enjoyed my Connect Roasters coffee. So Dinger's Pod code, get 25% off your first order. So thanks for listening. This is episode 109. Nine. Nice. Go Cubs, and go watch the World Baseball Classic. Starts tomorrow.
Let's go.
Go USA. USA doesn't play tomorrow, but the first game is tomorrow, so that'll be fun. At least we can watch some meaningful games tomorrow. True. So all right, go Cubs. Go Cubs.